What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Rotoworld Basketball Show presented by NBC. I'm Dan Titus, Yahoo Fantasy Basketball Analyst. Joining me every week to talk about fantasy basketball, all things fantasy basketball, Noah Rubin and Raphielle Johnson, both fantasy experts from NBC. What's up, fellas? How we feeling today? Raph, you must be feeling a little apprehensive about that first performance of the year Knicks, man. How you doing over there?
We've had better days. But yeah, it's 1 out of 82. That's pretty much how I have to keep it in perspective. So
for sure. Yeah. And Noah, you got the Atlanta Hawks, your Atlanta Hawks playing tonight against the Brooklyn Nets. Are you feeling pretty optimistic about it? And I know your Dyson Daniels stock is looking pretty good.
Yeah, I'm feeling optimistic. The first 5 games, I think it's against the Nets, Hornets, Thunder, and then 2 against, I think, the Wizards. So I'm feeling like the Hawks should be pretty good to start out. So hopefully some wins to start out the year. But basketball's back. It's hard to be too upset. I mean, even if they lose, it's like we're back.
We have real games to talk about. No more exhibition play. The season kicked off last night on Tuesday. But before we get to everything that happened around the association last night, I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room. I'm sitting here wearing a Allen Iverson shirt. And then, of course, the Sixers come out and say, oh, Joel Embiid is not going to be playing on Wednesday's season opener. And, oh, by the way, neither is Paul George. And actually, Joel Embiid is going to be missed the first week of the season. So I'll start with Noah. What are your thoughts on the Sixers and how should they be approaching? What should fantasy managers be doing to approach, this first start of the season with those 2 stars being out?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little surprising to me that they were already out for the season opener. Obviously, Paul George, his injury was during the preseason, but we knew they were going to miss time during the regular season. So we had already been kind of prepping for what guys to stream. And now it's just going to happen a little bit earlier than maybe we were hoping for when we drafted these guys pretty early. I think Andre Drummond is the obvious candidate to replace Joel Embiid in the starting lineup. He's going to give you a ton of rebounds. Anything else that's just kind of a nice bonus. Really, it's the rebounds that you're streaming him for. And then on the wing, the guy I'm looking at as probably the best option, and at this point, because of the injury news surrounding both of them in the past few weeks, he was probably already drafted, but Kelly Oubre, I think he's going to get a lot of points early on, chip in here and there in other categories, like maybe a steal here and there, a couple assists, a couple rebounds. But both those guys, I'm expecting strong starts to the season. And then obviously just from not having stars out there, Tyrese Maxey should be going crazy early on.
Crazy. And Raph, I mean, we kind of knew what this is going to be the new norm for Joel Embiid anyway. I mean, are you that surprised that he's missing the first week of the season? And if you rostered him anywhere, I'm not sure if you did or not, but is this something that how many games do you think he's going to play this year based off of what you're seeing already? Like, this isn't a good start.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say 55. That's going to be my guess because, you take away the back-to-backs. If he sits out one end of all of them, that brings you down to 67. And he's one of those players based on the track record. You have to factor in at least one extended absence due to injury. So I'm going to say 55. We've seen him produce elite per game value, obviously, throughout the majority of his career. But at a certain point, I think fantasy managers are going to have to ask themselves going into, well, obviously drafts are likely done at this point, but when you're going into drafts, how many games can you afford to absorb him missing on your roster? And I think if you were to take him with a late first-round pick, that's going to be a prevailing thought throughout that draft process. And as Noah said, I think the pickups are obvious here in terms of Drummond and Oubre. I think in really deep leagues, I'd consider KJ Martin as well. Really good finisher, I think, playing off of Tyrese Maxey. And he looks like he's going to be a starter, too, filling that void left by Tobias Harris. So you're looking at field goal percentage, maybe some rebounds, a block shot or 2 here every so often. But he's someone in deep leagues I would consider if Drummond and Oubre are already off the board, which they probably should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kelly Oubre, he's 35% rostered. So those in shallow leagues, you might have a shot at getting him. Drummond's pretty similar in that too. But yeah, from a Sixers perspective, man, like I'm just confused as to how the organization would, allow Embiid to go play at the Paris Olympics. He looked overweight then he comes back and now he's like super skinny, but like we haven't heard anything about the practice, the practice elements. We have, obviously he has this load management program that he's talking about taking off periodic times of rest. And it's like, what happened? Like, I mean, at least we know Kawhi Leonard had surgery. This guy
they also said that Embiid had a procedure that no one really knew about. So it's like, all right, between the end of the Olympics and training camp, I don't think it was a serious procedure, but there was something done. And it's like, I don't know, if I'm a Sixers fan, it's like that Grand Theft Auto, here we go again meme. You guys walking down the street, because it's like,
yeah.
I
just don't understand how he's not in basketball shape at this point. You know what I mean? Like, you've had 2 months to get ready for this moment, and like we're still like wondering when is it going to happen. So it wouldn't surprise me if this goes out to be 2 weeks. You gave 55 game estimate. I'm at like 50 because I don't know, man. It could be 40. Who the hell knows at this point? But what we do know is that the Boston Celtics are the reigning champions. They had their ring ceremony last night and won in epic fashion, a trouncing of the New York Knicks. It wasn't even close. They hit 29 3-pointers and tying an NBA record. I mean, there's just no answer for the Boston shooters at this point, right? Like, sure, this is the first game of the season. There's some overreactions here, but Jayson Tatum, I think it was probably clear to me that this guy is on a different, playing on a different level. He looked motivated, angry. Maybe it was all the hoopla and talk in the offseason that kind of got him another additional chip on his shoulders if he needed one. But he had 37 points, 10 assists. I mean, just 8 threes, just look locked in. Raph, who's one player you're buying and selling from that opening night? I know it's early, but there's got to be some kind of takeaway there.
I think for Boston, there was nothing that really surprised me. I think that starting 5, they're pretty much all locked in. Your only question is, what happens when Al Horford takes a night off? He's not going to play back-to-back, so I think it's safe to assume that. You're looking at Luke Cornett. I think Luke Cornett had a steal and a block shot. You like to see a bit more in the rebounding numbers, but 3 in 19 minutes isn't terrible. I don't really know in terms of Boston if I'm like buying or selling anyone. It just is what it is with that group. We know what we're going to get, at least until Kristaps Porzingis returns. New York, I would buy Deuce McBride. I know you wrote about him in your column this morning. They're going to need his scoring. The depth it's not completely gone, but you lose a guy like Donte DiVincenzo and his 3-point shooting. They need someone to make up that quick fire scoring. Deuce McBride was pretty much one of their few bright spots last night. So I think I'd buy him. In terms of selling anyone, I think the jury's still out. Like, I saw someone refer to Mikal Bridges as Mikal Kid Gilchrist, and that's
oh man!
But he
doesn't look that broke. Come on,
yeah. But he give him credit. He looked a lot better in the second half. 7 for 8 from the field, 16 points. So that's encouraging. I don't think I'm going to be selling anyone because, like you said, we're 1 game in.
Yeah. And Noah, what were your thoughts there too on that Celtics Knicks game?
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of what Raph said. I think I might just kind of take the other side of the Deuce McBride, I guess theory case, whatever we want to say. I'd be selling. I don't know. I mean, if he's on the waiver wire, I'd be looking to pick him up. But I also think like he just had an incredible shooting night, and he didn't really do anything else. Like, it was like mostly just points and not a ton in other categories. I don't know that he shoots that well, but he could still have like this really good season where he averages like 13, 15 points per game as the 6th man. But I think it might be a good opportunity to say, okay, we've had like 2 basketball games being played. Everybody's seeing how well he played. Let me sell high a little bit here and take advantage of that opportunity. And then obviously Mikal Bridges is kind of the polarizing guy from last night, but y'all brought it up. He was much better in the second half. It almost seems like he kind of ditched the shooting for him. Like it looked a little quicker on some of the shots that I saw in the second half. So hopefully that's something where he's just kind of like, oh, I am actually not this bad of a shooter. This form looks really bad and it's making my numbers worse. Like, why would you stick with that? But anyways, it's a whole very confusing thing. So hopefully he just continues to shoot like he did in the second half.
Yeah, I think the halftime adjustment was certainly noticeable. And I mean, I got one share of Mikal Bridges in a high stakes league. So I was like, all right, thankfully he got it together a little bit. But OG Anunoby didn't really, 1 for 7 from the field, had a pretty forgetful game. And, I wouldn't be panicking as a fantasy manager. I think you bought him, where he was being drafted. He's more of a stocks guy anyway. So I wouldn't be too concerned about his performance. As Raph said, only a few bright spots for this Knicks team. I think a few might even be a stretch because outside of Jalen Brunson and Deuce McBride, there wasn't really much else. I mean, Cat You know, pretty quiet night for the big bodega. What are they calling him? Something bodega.
I guess they're calling him that now.
I don't know if he's earned any nickname yet in the Mecca yet, but
Raf's calling him Carl until further notice.
Carl, I didn't say that, but he's exactly right.
Legal.
there are things that need to be proven. I think my skepticism is well known in some private circles. So yeah.
Is there a concern? I mean, obviously it's one game again, but is there concern about this depth now that, you know, Donte's gone? I mean, Miles looks like he's stepping up. He could be a dark horse for like a 6-man of the year type of role if that continues. Like, I mean, he essentially just took over all of the minutes that Emmanuel quickly had before the trade last year, like 25 minutes. If that's going to hold, like that's, to me, that seems fantasy relevant worthy as a microwave bucket off the bench. But yeah, I mean, where do they look to? If Josh Hart, he can't really shoot. If OG's missing and Mikal Bridges is still going through his, you know, shooting alterations each game, I'm like, where are they going to get this second scoring from? So Cat has to perform at this point.
I mean, yeah, I don't really know what else to add there. Like, you know, you take on that responsibility, you have to perform. So yeah, I think what also hurt was losing Landry Shamet during the preseason. You know, he was someone who was supposed to help with the perimeter shooting off the bench. Yeah, I don't know where they're going to look now. There are reports about Matt Ryan that really doesn't excite me in a fantasy or a real basketball sense. But it's like, yeah, whatever, man.
Whatever, man. We got to go to LA anyway. Another historic night. You know, Bronny and LeBron James shared the court for 3 minutes. It was a great moment. I'm glad that it's over with now. We can send Bronny back to the G League. Jeez. But the Lakers actually won a game for the first time in 8 years at home. So this is actually a good moment. I think AD made the joke like, oh, it's funny that we actually got a win when something good happened for LeBron. But Anthony Davis, man, 36 points, 16 boards, 4 dimes, 3 blocks. Like, I think the one thing that Darvin Ham never figured out is like, hey, maybe I should play through Anthony Davis. Clearly JJ Redick is. So, I mean, at this point, Noah, what are your thoughts on the Lakers and how they looked, and any takeaways from that game that you saw on either side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly certain within a week of getting hired, JJ Redick talked about how he wanted to make Anthony Davis the primary source of offense, and he did that immediately. And we saw the results. Like, he's going to be a stud in fantasy this year, just like he has been his entire career. The main question mark has been, can this guy stay healthy? He did last year. Hopefully he can continue to do that again. But yeah, very excited about what JJ Redick's doing. I think you could have just not watched the game and just scrolled through Lakers Twitter, and they would have told you every little thing that JJ Redick did significantly better than Darvin Ham. It was like very little things. Like, I saw somebody who was like, they went on a 5-0 run and he called a timeout. This was great. And I was like, wow, that's kind of nitpicky.
That's very specific.
It's funny. And then the quote about him saying that, they were playing with new basketballs, not used basketballs. Right. I'm like, I'm going to say something to the league about that. I'm like, okay, like, cool. So like, obviously the coaching just seems significantly better, even though it's only one game for a guy that hasn't coached before, but I'm very excited about what they can do.
Yeah, Raph, what are your thoughts on the game? What stood out to you on either side? Of the Wolves side, obviously there was some Mike Conley minutes conversation that was kind of wondering, like, in a close game, how is he only getting 20 minutes? Or anything on the Lakers side that you noticed that kind of piqued your interest?
I think for the Lakers, it'd be Rui Hachimura for me. The way he played offensively, I thought he had a good night. 50% from the field. You got some defensive production too. 2 steals and a block shot. You're not really expecting that from him, I don't believe. So, well, I'd like to see a little bit more on the boards. You understand how you can only get 5 when Anthony Davis has 16. Like, he's going to dominate the glass. On the other side, you have Rudy Gobert. So rebounds are kind of be at a premium in a matchup like that. So looking at Minnesota, I think if you have Donte DiVincenzo shares, you're a bit excited. He didn't have a great night shooting the basketball, but 32 minutes. Mike Conley only played 20, so it was kind of a timeshare between DiVincenzo and Anthony Edwards in terms of running the offense when Conley wasn't out there. If you're going to get 32 minutes from Donte coming off the bench, you have to trust that the shooting will sort itself out. I think he's a guy that if you got him with a late round pick, you're pretty pleased with what you saw through one game in terms of how he was used and the playing time he got.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm definitely a bit concerned about Mike Conley. He's obviously 36 years old. Play has definitely been declining. He was a late round option for those in fantasy leagues, but he's not a must roster guy. 63% rostered right now. He would be looking. I mean, I'll give it maybe a couple more games, but if that holds, that he's not playing anywhere close to 30 minutes a night, and we see Donte DiVincenzo playing more of those backup point guard minutes as well as backup shooting guard, and he creeps up into that 28 to 30. I think you got to provide. I mean, that's definitely going to be a boost for Donte DiVincenzo. So Naz Reid also had an all right game off the bench. I think their bench actually, 36 points off the bench was actually pretty helpful for the Timberwolves to get them back in the game. But I want to talk about Julius Randle a bit, because while he had 16 points and 9 rebounds, there was definitely moments where he was like not interested. Like he was just not. I don't know if he was just sitting there like trying to figure out what his flow was, but I guess it's a good thing that he still, from a fantasy perspective, produced something. But is there any concern there? Like, do you think that was like an early indication of this could be a bumpy road and Minnesota may not be as good because they're still having to adjust to the playing styles and so forth? Raph, I'll go to you on that one.
There is some concern when guys look disinterested mid-possession and don't get back on defense, stuff like that. We saw that at times in New York as well. Mm-hmm. So now you're in a situation where it's clear who's going to dominate the basketball, and it's not you. I think that goes beyond adjusting to a new team. So I think that's going to be you want to give it time if you're a fantasy manager who has him. I think he was like a middle round pick in a lot of these standard leagues. So you give it a little time, but that wasn't the best look for Julius. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens, because the Naz Reid minutes, while he was solid offensively, they were really poor defensively when he was out on the floor last night. So yeah, I'd give Julius some time, but that was not a good first impression to make on your new fan base last night.
And Noah, do you think Rui Hachimura, I think he's like 53% rosters, he's someone that you think has some staying power now? Is he like a hold in fantasy leagues based off the aggressive nature that he came out with? Or do you think that was more of like a game planning thing, which he surprisingly admitted to the media, like, oh, we know Julius Randle's lazy, so we're just going to attack him all game? The pressers last night were so good. Like I felt that just for 2 games, like I felt we got some gems. But yeah, what are you doing with Rui? Are you holding him, or do you think that this is a guy like Deuce McBride, where it's like, if you have him, maybe you sell high if someone's looking for points?
Yeah, I think the last 2 talking points kind of go together. I think that Rui is a guy that benefited from the Lakers saying, hey, Julius Randle is not going to like he'll get lazy. I know you gave Raph Pete. You can see it in Raph's eyes. Like you gave him PTSD when you talked about taking plays off.
So glad he's off my team. I'm so glad he's off my team.
Exactly. Then you got Cat back, which I know.
Yeah, that.
Like you said, private circles, different conversations. But no, I think Rui played really well. I think it's you can stream him on lighter days and feel pretty good about it. The defensive numbers may or may not always be there. Maybe JJ Redick unlocks something, and we'll see those more consistently. I'm not buying into that, but I think he'll give you some buckets here and there, kind of game by game. But yeah, I think this was more of a matchup thing, and he's not a guy that I'm desperate to pick up at this point just because he had a pretty good game, even though I do want to give credit where it's due. Like he played well, but I think that may have been the Randle factor there. And like you said, Dan, like that quote was great. He's like, yeah, like, no, coach said it, like, we're just going to do it. And it's exactly what happened. There was also during Bronny's 3 minutes, LeBron had that had a backdoor cut off Randle, where Randle was playing up, got a dunk with Bronny sitting in the corner. Julius Randle didn't even like turn his head, and LeBron was dunking. Like it was bad.
Hopefully it gets better. We definitely have more sample size. I'd say one name to kind of look out for. The Timberwolves have a pretty favorable schedule. They play on Thursday, which is only 4 games. So you may want to hop in on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, maybe Jaden McDaniels. Those guys are both under 50% rostered if you're looking for another game to possibly get in there to stream, because Friday and Saturday both have 10-game slates. You're not going to be able to get some of those bench guys in. So just something to consider. But we have some more hoops to watch tonight. But after we go to that, what are you guys doing on Saturday? I know what I'll be doing. I will be tune in to the Big Ten Saturday night. Number 3, Penn State continues their quest for a national title as they travel to Camp Randall for a showdown with Wisconsin. Coverage of the battle starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. So we have a lot more ball to talk about the rest of the week. Obviously, we have, 10 games tonight, and then it's going to get crazy. But let's talk about some injury news, man. Let's start off with the Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo, sat out in the preseason a little bit. He looks like he's probable for Wednesday, so no concerns there. But I think there's considerable concern for Khris Middleton. It's not just one ankle, it's both ankles. How can someone play basketball with two bad ankles? So I don't know. Are we putting him in that Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid category of like, we just don't know? Like he'll play when he plays. Like he was ramping up. It sounded like there was a chance that he could play, and then they opted to be conservative with it. But if you rostered Khris Middleton, are you concerned about, his outlook going forward? You get it, Raph.
Oh, okay. I'd ask if you haven't rostered why you drafted him to begin with.
Amen. Like
that. I'm sorry, like you said, two ankles that were operated on during the offseason. That's a serious concern, especially considering you have to like actively run around on a basketball court. So
I'm just thinking of the playing defense element with like
exactly
we're going to be cooking him.
The quick changes in direction. Yeah, this is really bad. Like if I would hope if you drafted him, you got him outside of the top 100, because anything more than that, you're dealing with serious sunk cost here, because who knows how many games you're going to get out of him. And it's not like an Embiid or Kawhi situation where you say, all right, if I get 50, 55 games and they're available in fantasy playoff time, I'm in decent shape. I can kind of work around my roster throughout the year to get to the playoffs. Middleton isn't that type of player anymore. So I think it's a serious concern that we're now dealing with more injuries for him.
Do you think that opens the door for like a Gary Trent Jr. to be streamable?
Yeah.
What are you thinking from a fantasy perspective of someone to benefit from that?
I think him for sure, just because it looks like he's going to fill that role that Malik Beasley held last season. Taurean Prince is someone else in like really deep leagues to consider, but yeah, those are pretty much the only two guys I think that would have any type of streaming value while Middleton is still working through his injuries.
Yeah, and Charlotte also going through their injury woes. No surprise. Mark Williams has no timetable for his return. Awesome. Noah, are we adding Nick Richards or are we passing on it?
Yeah, especially in category leagues, adding Nick Richards 100%. Rebounds, blocks, high field goal percentage, just traditional center stuff he'll be good at. And LaMelo Ball's healthy, which I know for a good bit of last year when Nick Richards was playing, LaMelo Ball was sidelined. So he had Vasily Micic and Trey Mann feeding him the ball, but now he's got one of the best passers in the league. So I'm expecting Nick Richards to be a candidate for like a double-double with a block and a half with a good field goal percentage. I think that's absolutely somebody that's worth streaming, because Charlotte's not good about reporting injuries and giving us clear timetables. And it's honestly like it's very surprising. And I don't want to just truly attack somebody, but it's kind of surprising that in this day and age, with how much money is invested into fantasy sports and betting and just selling general tickets, how the lack of clarity has been something that they specifically have been able to get away with. Like they don't even always put what type of injury it is. They'll just put left knee. I don't know what left knee means. Do they tear their ACL or do they get a boo-boo? Like, I don't know. Like, so
I have one too. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Nick Richards, definitely a guy to stream.
Yeah. And he's widely available. I mean, 16% rostered right now. So if you missed out on big men, definitely scoop him up. I think there's definitely some value there. Who's the other? Oh, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be missing his first game with a hamstring injury as he's still coming back from that. Santi Aldama, I mean, can I interest you in Brandon Clark? Where are we going with that, Raph? Are we going that deep in terms of a pickup?
I think I'd be a little more interested in Aldama since it appears he's going to be the starter. Brandon Clark's going to be mainly like a field goal percentage and stocks guy. So I think if you're looking for a streamer, I'd probably prefer to go with Aldama, but they both look like deep league options for me personally.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Aldama, he's under 10% roster, but I mean, it could be a quick streamer if you have room in your lineup to fit him in there. Trey Murphy, he's still out with a hamstring injury with the Pelicans. Noah, do you think that this is something that, I mean, how do you feel like this rotation is going to shake out, right? Because there's just so much talent on this Pelicans team. Obvious flaws are they have like almost zero front court, but is there a world where now this Trey Murphy injury kind of helps Brandon Ingram's stock? Does it help Herb Jones? Is there anybody that you think that even would benefit that's worth picking up off of waivers from Trey Murphy being out for what seems to be like the next, at least minimum few games?
Yeah. When we wrote, I don't remember exactly how long ago this was, Raph, but it was like one question that we need to answer before the season starts. My thing was like, what are the Pelicans going to do? They have so many guys that need rotation minutes in positions 1 through 4, and they didn't make any moves. So, Trey Murphy being out, I know Zion and Dejounte Murray are questionable still. I think that, maybe more recent updates is that they are on track to play, but there could be some minutes that way, but I don't think that there's anybody on the team that I would be interested in streaming just because Trey Murphy's out, because I'm assuming the starting lineup is going to be Dejounte, CJ, Brandon Ingram, Zion, somebody at center, and then Herb Jones off the bench. So like if they have multiple injuries where there's a lot of minutes open up, then maybe like a Jordan Hawkins potentially. But I think strictly off of Trey Murphy not playing, like, no, they are still loaded at these handful of positions. So it's not really somebody to benefit directly off the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And RJ Barrett is going to be missing. There you go. Rafts have some landscaping going on outside for a second, so bear with us there. Noah, so the Toronto Raptors, RJ Barrett's still going to be out with a shoulder injury. Have you picked up Grady Dick in any places? Is that someone that interests you in terms of like his 3-point shooting, what we saw from his preseason, which was actually pretty promising?
Yeah, I mean, he is a guy that I would definitely be interested in streaming. I think a little bit better in points leagues because I don't know how much he's going to do in other categories. It's probably going to be a lot of points and a lot of threes.
Right.
I can't remember off the top of my head just because I have a lot of leagues, but I know I have him in at least one of my dynasty leagues, so I'm excited to see what he can do. But we'll see if it's anything more than just points and threes. But I think it should be enough there to make him worth streaming. You may want to wait until it's a lighter day that they play since there's 10 games tonight, but I think he's good enough to be worth it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Grady Dick, Raph?
Yeah, I think he's someone who's in a position, especially in deeper leagues, there you go ahead and run him out there as long as RJ's out, because Bruce Brown is out as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, they're going to need his scoring, his 3-point shooting ability. You're probably not going to get too much in terms of defensive stats, but points and 3-pointers, the potential is there, especially if he gets to play off of Scotty Barnes for extended minutes.
Yeah. Noah, you said something that piqued my interest. You said that you have Grady Dick in a spot for Dynasty. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are, and I'll start with you, Noah. What rookie do you think is going to be the best fantasy asset this year? There's only a handful that we can really choose from, right? And I think obviously the odds-on favorite would probably be Zach Edey, just because he's starting from jump. But do you see a pathway for Stephon Castle, Reed Shepherd, Khalil Ware? What are your thoughts? Even Alex Sarr, who's a solid late-round pick in a lot of fantasy leagues.
I think Zach Edey is, like you said, favorite for rookie of the year. I think he's gonna be the most impactful rookie in fantasy just because traditional center stats, he's an older rookie. Like he's going to start on a playoff team. All those things factor in well for him. I know Raph likes Stephon Castle, so I won't talk too much about him so I can let him, talk about his guy. I think Reed Shepherd and Alex Sarr are a bit intriguing. I like them more long-term than this year, but the concern is how many minutes is Reed Shepherd going to get on this loaded team? So I think, can he do enough in 15 to 20 minutes to either earn more playing time or be worth streaming in deeper leagues? And then Sarr, again, like him long-term, but I don't know how many issues he's going to have as a rookie. Like, is he going to try and do too much on the perimeter and his field goal percentage isn't going to be great? Like, is he going to be able to really make an impact on the glass, or is it going to be, hey, he gives you some defensive numbers and that's where he makes his money? So I think Edey is the guy. Castle is pretty solid, and I don't know. I think a lot of these guys I'm just not sure about. I was really surprised Rob Dillingham didn't get any minutes last night, which I think was something when we were talking about, Mike Conley only playing 20 minutes. I think if you were just checking the box score, natural reaction is, oh, he played Rob a lot. No, he didn't play at all. So that one was surprising. I was expecting him to, potentially be like a sixth man, seventh man, maybe now that Donte DiVincenzo's there, but a guy that was going to score and pass the ball a lot. But so that one was surprising to me.
And Raph, what are your thoughts? Do you want to do this? Is your opportunity to get on your soapbox to campaign for Stephon Castle, rookie of the
I'm
year?
actually going to campaign for a different UConn lottery pick. That's Donovan Clingan.
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
Robert Williams is already out again due to injury. And Clingan doesn't strike me as a type of player who needs high 20s to low 30s in minutes to provide value. I think as a rebounder, shot blocker, you get some secondary playmaking in there as well, which could be critical when you think about Scoot Henderson's continuing issues with turnovers. So I think Donovan Clingan, he's going to come off the bench to start the year, but I think he's someone to keep in mind here in terms of fantasy value because, like you guys said, this rookie class doesn't really have any like early fantasy standouts that you can point to and say this guy could potentially be a stud right away. So I think Donovan Clingan is someone – the value early in the year may not be great, but you think about after the turn of the calendar and then the trade deadline, that's going to be a bad team. So he should play plenty down the stretch too.
Yeah, I think that's the appeal for me for Clingan is really about, when we get into silly season mode and this team is going full rebuild, maybe they traded Jeremy Grant by then. Who knows about DeAndre Ayton? But I think in that last preseason game, you really got to see the upside with Donovan Clingan just as a rebounder, a stock specialist. And then just Raph said a secondary playmaker. So, yeah, I think that could be somebody that's out there. Let me see how much he's rostered right now. I think he's still fairly low. He's sitting at 29% rostered right now. So you can definitely get him in shallow leagues, competitive leagues, 12 team and up. He's probably already scooped up, but definitely look into that. So NFL Week 8, Sunday night. Two storied franchises renew their rivalry on Sunday night. Find out if Dak Prescott and the Cowboys can get back on track after their bye week when they face off against Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. Coverage of that matchup starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Yeah, I will reluctantly be tuning into that game because I'm a Birds guy, man. And there's all these injuries going on in the Niners, and plus it's basketball season, y'all. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of hoops to watch if you decide to turn off of Dak Prescott throwing a bunch of interceptions. Let's talk about the week ahead and how we can kind of prepare for the rest of the week here. It's obviously Wednesday. So is there any pickups, Noah, that stand out to you from a fantasy perspective? The lighter slate days are Thursday and Sunday, 4 games on Thursday and 5 games on Sunday. So those are the real opportunities that I see for pickups. But what are you thinking?
Let's see, just off a quick glance at some of the games that are being played on Thursday, I think maybe not a ton of great streamers, but I mean, I'll bring back a rookie that, I gave Raph a chance to talk about, but he didn't want to, but Stephon Castle playing on a 4-game day. I think that he is a guy that I don't know his roster percentage off the top of my head, but a guy that should play fairly early on. And Chris Paul recently was raving about him. I think they like him in the organization. I don't know exactly what the stat profile is going to look like as a rookie because I think he's a good defender, but how many defensive stats is he going to get? I think he's worth keeping an eye on. I think just off it being a lighter day, he's worth taking a chance on.
Do you think he could be like an Amen Thompson type of guy where like good rebounder at his position, probably get some stocks, maybe a few steals there, won't shoot a good percentage? Like, how do you feel? I mean, Raph's the Stephon Castle guy. So
I don't know if he can bring that other category production that Amen Thompson brought to the table last year, but I think he's in a good position to provide value overall. Think about it. They've got 2 other first-round picks in their backcourt, Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham. Neither one really separated themselves throughout their time in San Antonio. So I think the door is open for Castle, especially when you consider how good he is defensively in terms of the athleticism and the way he moves and impacts passing lanes. So I think there's certainly a chance for him to provide early value fantasy-wise. I just wonder how dominant is Chris Paul going to be in those point guard minutes? Say how many minutes he's going to play at the point, because if he's getting, I don't know if he'll get like, he won't approach mid-30s, but if he's at like 30, that may not leave too much room for a Castle, especially when you also have Trey Jones in the mix. So,
yeah, I mean, I'd also feel a little bit optimistic about Castle with Devin Vassell still being out. You know, I mean, as long as that secondary playmaker of that offense isn't going to be in there, he should have a role to step up there. So hopefully he can make an impact here. Send Keldon Johnson back to the bench. But yeah, I think the one player that I'm kind of eyeing is Dyson Daniels. Only 18% rostered right now in Yahoo leagues, and the Hawks play 3 games to close out the rest of the week. Noah already talked about their cake opponents that they're going to be facing, so it's just a very fantasy friendly environment. They also have a back-to-back on Sunday and Monday, so you can get that one transaction that you do on Saturday can carry you for a couple more days. So I think Dyson Daniels is a really good option for fantasy managers. Raph, who's your pickup this week, or someone that you'd recommend?
Let's see. We talked about a few guys. I think in terms of the Thursday schedule, I'd consider Peyton Pritchard. They're playing Washington, and as bad as New York looked on Tuesday, they aren't as bad as the Wizards. And I think last year we watched Sam Hauser. What did he hit, like 11 threes in DC one game? So I think maybe you consider Sam Hauser as well. But that may be a game where the Celtics, if they show up, ready to kill, those main guns get a lot of rest time in the second half. And we see a lot more of guys like Pritchard, who's playing more minutes, I think, in terms of where he's being used within the rotation. So that's already a positive. Light 4-game slate. I don't think you have too much to lose if you were to stream one of those two guys for that game.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And if you look at the schedule, the Celtics played the Detroit Pistons right after that. So that's another opportunity for Peyton Pritchard to get up. Yeah. I mean, Peyton Pritchard shot 10 times last night. I mean, he shot 1 for 10, but he also gave you 4 rebounds and 4 assists. So I think there's actually a lot of fancy appeal here. And I just can't get this out of my head on media day, Celtics media day, when Jaylen Brown was like, oh, there's going to be times where we're going to play like the Pistons and we're going to give all the usage to guys like Peyton Pritchard so that they can get the experience of what it's like to take on more usage. So I was like, after that, I was like, well, let's circle that one. Peyton Pritchard, week 1. Yeah, he's an ad for me. So yeah, totally agree with the Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser take as well.
I got one more deep league name to consider. That would be Toumani Camara in Portland. 3 games to play the remainder of the week. Not going to give you much as a score, but the defensive production could be valuable in category leagues. So, and he's going to start. He's starting next to our dear friend Jeremy Grant. We've had conversations about the rebounding deficiencies. So I think Toumani Camara in extremely deep leagues with 3 games to play for Portland, he's someone worth considering.
Yeah, man, that is deeper than I thought you'd go, man. That's like under 3% rostered right there. So yeah, there you have it. Any other parting thoughts, guys? Any other main names you want to mention? We mentioned a bunch of waiver guys, but obviously it's the first week of the season. Tons of overreactions. Don't drop a player if he performs badly on night 1. Give it some time, but back end depth certainly give you guys some options to consider for the week ahead. But any other thoughts, you guys?
I mean, we didn't talk at all about some of the backcourt guys not named Steph Curry in Golden State. And I think that at least 1, maybe 2, potentially all 3 of them will have standard league value. Maybe not great standard league values, but I think either Brandon Podziemski or DeAnthony Melton's going to start. Both those guys have fantasy friendly games. Warriors still have 3 games this week, 3 games next week. So, and I think they do play on that lighter Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So this Sunday for sure.
Yes, they do. They play the Clippers.
Okay. And, no Kawhi Leonard Clippers. So, but either Pods or DeAnthony Melton's going to start. And I think both of them should play enough to be really good in fantasy. And then Buddy's going to shoot 3s.
Yeah, I think that was the person I was thinking about was Buddy, especially with the way we saw the Boston Celtics pretty much set the stage of, hey, in order to win in this league, you need to be able to shoot 3s. I think, Steve Kerr realized this in the preseason. They attempted far more 3-pointers this year. So I think that they've addition by subtraction, right? Got Clay out of there, brought in D'Anthony Melton, who's capable 3-point shooter, Buddy Hield, and Brandon Podziemski. I don't know if he's going to get 10 attempts a game, but he's definitely going to be shooting at least 5.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Golden State. And I think it's going to be an interesting exercise of like who's going to step up. You know, Jonathan Kuminga has been talking heavy. Obviously, he didn't come to a contract agreement for a new deal with the Warriors, but he compared himself to Pascal Siakam and Kawhi Leonard. Those are some substantial names to say there, bro. You better bring it, because outside of the scoring, we haven't really seen much from you in fantasy. So, yeah, I'm curious to see which Warrior kind of steps up there. I got my bet on Podziemski, but we'll see what happens there. All right, y'all. We'll see you next Wednesday, 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 Eastern, for the Rotoworld Basketball Show. For Noah Rubin, Raphielle Johnson, Dan Titus. See ya. Peace.